Okay, and our last submitter for today is Fairwell's watchdog, and the only excerpt will be left.
Thank you.
And last saw you were hearing number 4 on the other coast.
Yes, the other side. Okay, and I'll stay seated because everybody is seated. It feels very strange and immobilized to be seated and speaking. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'd like to acknowledge Ngāti Hine, the traditional kaitiaki of the land that we're on, and to thank Ngāti Te Ara and Ngāti Kōpaki, the hapu of this amazing marae. I'm Leonie Exel from the Bay of Islands Watchdogs, a group of 1,900 dog owners, mostly in and around the Bay of Islands. And our key issue with the district plan, as you know, relates to the banning and restricting of pet dogs via resource consent conditions. FNDC has been doing this for over 25 years. So where are we at today? Today in the district planning process and with Dogs of Kiwi, the 42A report on subdivision, which was posted online on the 30th of September, summarised our position. Now, who wrote this one? This was Kenton. Yes, summarised our position brilliantly in a paragraph. Thank you. You said, and I agree mostly, the BI watchdogs advocate for an immediate pause on dog bans or restrictions within subdivisions until thorough consultation and evidence gathering occurs. The submitter, that is us, recommends legal, academic and policy reviews inclusive of community input to assess current bans, explore 20 responsible alternatives and evaluate the broader social housing and conservation impacts. Almost perfect. Thank you for that fabulous summary. Sadly, the same 42A report goes on to say that the author agrees with the writer of the Indigenous Biodiversity Section 42A report, which was posted in July 24, paragraphs 215 to 222. Sorry, Jerome. Is Jerome here? But that report recommends effectively business as usual. So what has been done is to continue being done. That is, that FNDC staff will continue to place conditions relating to pet dogs and pet cats at their discretion. Pet dogs and pet cats, not feral dogs and feral cats, will be classified as pets in some instances in the district plan, regardless of how responsible their owner is or whether the pet is contained effectively. So if I take me as an example, my partner, God bless him, got a bit of land out in Jacks Bay 30, 40 years ago and built a house on it that I moved into when we met each other again 13 years ago. It's about a third of an acre. If we wanted to whack a granny flat on it, we would come to FNDC and FNDC would say to us, no, there's lots of kiwi around where you are, and if you wish to put the granny flat on, you can't unless you ban dogs and cats from both my own property and the granny flat. FNDC, when they do that, they'll email Doc to get the okay from Doc, and Doc will send them this document, which they have written purposely. That is the Bay of Islands distribution map support document. And Doc will write back and say, yes, we agree with that, or no, we don't. But likely they'll agree because Doc lobbies FNDC and works in step with FNDC in relation to this map. If I wanted to object to that, my subdivision would be delayed. I would have to find the money to fight in court against the might of the district council, known to be litigious and often rumoured to be vexatious, and DOC, a huge government department. Both are determined to ban and limit pet dog and cat ownership in the far north, and have fought for over a quarter of a century to be able to do so. That is exactly where we're at today. Okay, so let's step back for a moment and forget about IBP 09 and Section 42As and all the numbers, and just have a look at this in terms of the decision itself and what's happening. Let's look at the issues that might arise if FNDC, the council, agrees that business as usual, what FNDC is doing now, should continue as part of the district plan. To do that, we have to make some assumptions. So one of those assumptions is that Bay of Islands watchdogs will continue to fight this battle for the right to responsibly own a pet in our own homes and on our own land. That is a reasonable assumption. I was initially unemployed a couple of years ago when the government defunded the the writing of cultural reports. And now I say I'm retired, but broke, because I'm not yet 65. And I have much more time now to pursue causes and work with the group for those who are interested in it. The second assumption is that our group will stop trying to influence and lobby FNDC and instead just go to regulators like the Ombudsman and to central government and to the general public. And that is also happening with the Bay of Islands watchdogs in a number of regards. You will have seen the stuff online. We are working at the moment with the Human Rights Commission in relation to sexual harassment and freedom of association, ageism and some other things. And we will do likewise with this matter now. So if we do that, we go to the general public and the regulators, and what are we going to say? What questions will they ask? Here's what questions I've been asked. Here's the first one. How much land has been banned or restricted to dogs and cats, and where? And the first thing that people will realise is that we don't know that. We don't know that because FNDC hasn't collected it. When we asked them to collect it, they said that they would. Then they, I'm sorry to be rude to all FNDC, but this is historic. Nobody knows how much land is banned or where it is, or FNDC has that information. We have asked 5 times now for it to be released. Steve McNally was the only elected councillor with the courage to raise it at council. He asked and passed, a motion was passed with a couple of people notably against it, but most people were for it. Asked FNDC to collect that information. The information was not collected, so we then did a referendum saying, can you give it to us? And they said, no, we were asked to do that, but we don't have to. That's something which will go directly to the Ombudsman and I think would be heavily criticised. Okay, so the next question is systemic racism. Which ethnicity is most affected by this is the consequence of this decision. Which ethnicity is most affected? And the answer to that is Māori are most affected because Māori are disproportionately likely to be the household which has a dog. Māori have more dogs and more cats than anybody else, and we have just about more Māori than any other district in New Zealand, or close, pretty high. So that one, that's not being taken care of. How about the 9 iwi and the hundreds of hapu in this district? How many have been consulted about the banning and restricting of dogs and cats on their properties over the last 25, 30 years? Absolutely none. That's the answer to that decision. Were the dog tax war and the status of dogs in Te Ao Māori and cultural issues considered as part of this decision making? I can't find anything about the dog tax war. I don't know who knows about the dog tax war, but it is particularly pertinent over in the Hokianga. It's the first time that taxes were imposed by colonials, my ancestors, on Māori people, and they said get nicked. They were jailed terribly unfairly. A lot of awful things happened, as we know happened at that time. Dogs have an extraordinary status in Ao Māori. They used to make dog cloaks because they were sellable. They hunted for pigs, for families. Some whānau still have the same bloodline of the original dogs. If you ask people about neutering their dogs or spaying, some of them will tell you about that. That is not being considered in this decision making. How about the 9,000 dog owners that are on a database at FNDC? So you know who 9,000 of us are because we've registered our dogs. Now we all know that there's another 10,000 or more who aren't registered and they haven't been consulted either. I should say to this too that this is something which regulators are going to be very interested in because in the the dog management bylaw policy in the 2016, 17, 18 revision, not only were dog owners not consulted, they were actively not sent the questionnaires. The questionnaires were then evaluated and summarised in a way which did not take account of what the data was. We proved that, and that left somebody without a job because they'd been quite keen on stopping dogs being anywhere near Kiwi or anything else. Here's another one. What's the impact on housing availability? What research has been done on that? The regulators, the general public, or central government or political party might say. And the answer to that is, it's terrible for housing availability. If you go on to Trade Me real estate site, go and talk to a real estate agent. I've given you these stats before. It will show that our housing availability for people with pets is vastly less than other districts. So we are in the poorest district, the highest or very high number of Māori in the district. We have historical, cultural reason to have dogs and for dogs to be available to responsible owners. We can't get housing for anyone, and we particularly can't get housing for a pet. You watch Facebook, you see all those awful posts from people weeping, saying, we're having to move. We can't find somewhere for our pets. Will someone take my 7-year-old dog and my 3-year-old cat? So then the regulator or the public might say to us, what is the economic impact? Pretty important when you consider a council is often centred on finances and the economic prosperity of the district. What is the impact on our district? What do the developers think of trying to get a development going up here if you can't have a pet cat or a pet dog? How do the real estate agents go? What's it doing to people's prices? Is it making houses more expensive because people love Kiwi? Great. Fantastic for the district, or is it in fact making it harder to sell somewhere because that hasn't been successful? Next one, what is the knock-on effect, and who's done the research on classifying pets as pests? Now I say this, having now 7 or 8 years that I've been coordinating the watchdogs, I've been watching the definition of pests with some fear at NRC as well as FNDC, because that has a legal knock-on effect in countless documents about what is a pest and what is not. If you want to say feral dogs, that's dogs that aren't owned by owners, that are born in the wild and live in the wild, and feral cats, we'd agree with just about everything that's in there. But if you're talking about pet dogs and pet cats, that's not right. They are pests. If their owners choose to be irresponsible with them, they are irresponsible owners with pets. They don't turn into pests just because they do something good. Next one, is this decision, this is really important, this one. This is the one that actually drives me to get up and come to here and do another speech or try again on this particular issue for dogs and cats and Kiwi. Is this decision proportional to the risk? I worked in corrections, as some of you may know, for many years, which is all about risk analysis. What's the risk that this person is going to commit an offence in the future? What will that offence be? What's the level of harm that that offence will cause? What do we have to do to mitigate it? Sort of pretty basic. Is the number of Kiwi killed by dogs so great that we need to ban them from some places? Or is the risk to Kiwi from dogs substantive or even there? It is there. Some Kiwi are killed by dogs every year. Less than are killed by cars every year. We've got the data. Doc can tell you that the dog data, it underestimates the number of Kiwi killed by dogs and cats. But it also, if it does, underestimates the number killed by cars. I'll give you an example. I think it was last year, 2022. I think it was, might muddle these figures up, but there was about 20 Kiwi killed by cars and 13 killed by dogs. Did we ban cars? Did we? No, we didn't. Should we ban dogs? Should we restrict dogs? Absolutely. How do we do that? Through the Dog Control Act. There's a whole act for doing that, which this process is trying to subvert, I think. Okay, so what's the greatest killer of Kiwi? It's cars. It's cars. And it's people who let their dogs wander that need to be, they need to be regulated. They need to be prosecuted. These things need to happen. Not all this nightmare of having dogs banned in weird places and restricted in others at the behest of a particular officer who has to decide, well, shall I allow 1 here or 2 here? Shall we say to the owner that they can keep their dogs till they die, but then there are none? You know, these are silly questions, and they're silly questions. They're awful questions for people to have to, what more decision to have to make, given the profound impact that dogs have on their owners. Okay, was this predetermined? Here's a biggie by FNDC or dogs. Now this is really interesting, this one, because everybody hates predetermination, regulators do. I want to give you some examples from FNDC and DOC about predetermination. So when we began with the watchdogs, it was under Sean Clark's leadership and Julian Carter's. And we were protesting. We'd only just begun. We were protesting because the first bylaw that was drafted, if you recall, there was a bylaw drafted which said, amongst other things, that in Russell there would be no dogs permitted within 10 years, and there should be an immediate one-dog policy for these savage beasts of dogs that kill Kiwi terribly in Russell Peninsula. That person eventually left FNDC, but it gives you an idea of what the flavour is at FNDC about this issue. The flavour at FNDC is environmental and conservation, and that's fantastic. I believe in saving the world too. But it cannot be as anti-dog as it has been in the past. And there are all sorts of things which prove that it is. FNDC collectively has acted in a manner which is anti-dog owner for many years. So that's quite a What about dog? Now, dog, there are endless documents with dog pushing councils to do this kind of thing, to try to save Kiwi. Now, I believe it's morally right to save Kiwi and to save our precious species, whether they're endangered or threatened or at risk or whatever, they're ours and we should cherish them. But how we do that in a way that is acceptable to the community and fair to the community is what the issue is. What's the impact like on the community? What's that likely to be? What's a community like? And I don't know this. What's a community like when you ban children from learning how to play with pets? Because if you don't have pets when you're a kid, you're generally pretty hopeless with dogs later because you don't understand. Pets teach kids a lot about compassion and kindness and effort and love. Elderly people, we have a district which is making money from the large numbers of elderly people moving up here and doing all sorts of things to try and facilitate that. Guess who needs pets most? Is the elderly. Any research you look at, or any elderly that you talk to, talking to my 71-year-old mate before coming out, she was saying, oh, my social life is centred on my dog. She's out walking the dog, chatting to people, she's making doggy friends. She only walks once a day because she has to with the dog. There are many of us who are like that. So the impact on the community as pets are restricted or banned in various ways is likely to be profound. When FNDC was considering limiting the number of dogs per house, I don't know if you were around to remember this in the 16, 17, 18 negotiations, I was getting the worst calls from people weeping, saying, "Oh my God, I've got three dogs. You know, which one will I have to put down?" People were devastated. Dogs are like children to most dog owners. When you look at the research from Companion Animal Council of New Zealand, it shows you that the majority of dog owners and cat owners consider their pet to be a part of the family. It is a type of family, a family with a pet. So you're banning or restricting my type of family and the 1,900 people in our group type of family. You're banning or restricting them, and it isn't right, and it isn't fair, and it's not producing the results that you need. So given all this and the decisions and the things that haven't been looked at, the big question for FNDC is, I think, how will the community react when this is public? When finally we get ourselves really organised for publicity campaigns, we go to the Ombudsman, we go to David Seymour's Ministry of Regulation, God forbid, we go to as many places as we can to say this is not okay. How are the residents of the Parliament going to react when they get it? Because my experience is that the residents don't get it at the moment. It's hard to explain how these convoluted documents and this process has led to this outcome. People will say, I wasn't told, I wasn't consulted, it's overreach, it's hitting a brick back, it's killing a fly with a softball bat, it's unfair, and it's racist potentially. That's the reaction that FNDC will get as this progresses. And I think that that would be a fair reaction if this practice and policy is to continue. In closing, I would like to ask that all those who are able to influence this decision choose to stop and listen and advise FNDC that FNDC has a great deal more work to do if you want to be seen as fair, evidence-driven and honest in their dealings with the public and with pet owners in particular. Please do not ban our pets or restrict our pets from one more income. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Are there any questions?
Wow. The questions for me, I think the solution is very clear. So I have to find a recycling paper.
Yep. Questions?
Probably just ask you,
No, I think it's
as one of the councillors.
councillors back in the day. We're talking about a rule. We're talking about provisions of forest land, which should do. No.
Just the other 30 questions, was it?
It's 30.
Relating to information, the lack of information processes.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's the sort of thing, you know, dogs and cats are a hot issue, as everybody knows, and this is a dog issue where people don't know what's happening, and that's likely to create an outcry. And somehow, dog people love dogs; they love animals. We're not anti-Kiwi, but we need to find solutions that are reasonable and that are acceptable to everybody, so we could all work to say, right, we need responsible dog ownership, we need healthy management of Kiwi to keep dogs away from areas where they're running in front of them, but not just ban or restrict them on what is in fact a fairly arbitrary basis. You can talk about Kiwi £4, you know, 5 an hour or 7 an hour for a high density area, it doesn't matter. Those things aren't relevant. What's relevant is the community going to listen? Is it going to do what you want it to do? Is it going to think that FNDC is fair, or is it going to cause a nightmare? And I would guess the latter.
I have a question. Thank you for your presentation today. Really catching and understand where you're coming from. I just wanted to bring it back to the topic of subdivision and divisions that have been in front of us today, in the context of your suggestion of trying to get sort of result that works for everyone. Just saying that what's in the plan at the moment doesn't sort of work. But I just wanted to get a handle on your understanding of how it works in the subdivision chapter. My understanding is that it really applies to leading the management and type subdivision. Yeah, the appendix 3 is which relate to how these things here. What they're involved, and it's things like where these management plans or something like that. The criteria is measures to protect, manage and enhance and infestation blah 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 blah, including local intents of controlling dogs, cats, ross, rats, mustelids, and other animal pests. So you say that that clause could be improved or that change so that it will give you what you want?
That's hard because the subdivision, what the section, this is, and I could easily get this wrong because I just don't know enough about the district plans. But my understanding of section 42A was that the subdivision one was saying I defer to the Indigenous biodiversity one.
I remember you coming off it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So really, I'm talking about that. So in the context of subdivision, I don't know how that's applied. I know we tried to get information about how it's applied and where it's applied to understand it better. and to understand what alternatives might be acceptable to FNDC, and we've listed some of those. You know, the examples are requiring fencing on property, requiring that dogs is indoors at night, requiring that a cat is only there if there's a catio, blah, 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 de-sexing. All, you know, there's all sorts of other options, but that's not your question.
It's kind of, it's like one of the tools that
Oh,
you would
right,
say
okay.
fit into that requirement, rather than this kind of open ended
Sure.
thing. A lot of this is going to be.
No, let's have thousands of dogs. Not at all. I think
The second part of it is the whole lot of other subdivision that might happen in other areas where this wouldn't kick in. So there would be
Right.
no need to put in those sort of things.
However, given the fact that Kiwi are thriving, and so much so that they've, you know, been down, their threat level's been downgraded, it's a lot of Northland that already is either Kiwi high density, Kiwi present, in a Kiwi corridor, or adjacent to those areas, and all those things are taken into account in the decision making. I'm told at FNDC. So, you know, when I look at the map, it's most of Northland, and it's expanding. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got them here. They're sort of astonishingly. It's astonishing. It's fantastic that we're doing that with Kiwi, and we're doing that even though there are numerous people who let their dogs wander, who are not regulated properly for that, in my personal opinion. Not regulated enough. That issue is there is no funded community education from FNDC in relation to that. There needs to be. There's a fantastic course that's on Kiwi aversion. That's not about electrocuting your dog. It's all about how you can be smart about. These are the smart things. These are things that people will all appreciate. You know, everybody wants to deal with the wandering dog issue, but banning and restricting on the basis of subdivision, it's missing whole areas, and it's missing the point. The point is we need to have a dog management plan in this district, which is fit for purpose, which includes we have to do things to stop dogs being so aggressive that people are killed by them, as has happened recently to people in the last few years. That they're not attacked and returned, that they don't eat Kiwi, you know, and that's a handful of dogs. It's also a handful of owners.